The headlights cut through the night like twin searchlights, illuminating the drifting leaves until they blurred into shadows. In an instant, a small, bare foot stepped onto the gravel shoulder, sending John Blake's heart lurching. He slammed on the brakes tires, skidding in gravel, and the truck fishtailed to a stop with a final echoing crunch. The engine's roar fell away, replaced by an eerie silence. John threw open the door and tumbled onto the damp ground, adrenaline burning through his veins. Ahead, a 6-year-old boy stood trembling, eyes wide, as the trees whispered in the cold wind. Beyond him, half hidden in a veil of fallen oak leaves, lay a woman, her face bruised, her body still. The boy's small hand gripped John's coat sleeve, and the world narrowed to that moment of choice: drive on or reach down into the darkness and offer help. If you believe in the power of compassion to change lives, hit subscribe and leave a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from, and stay tuned for the incredible journey ahead. John sank to his knees beside the boy, and the motionless woman, the flashlight in his jacket pocket suddenly too dim to matter. He pressed a gloved hand to the woman's neck and found a thready pulse. Relief and urgency mingled in his chest as he glanced up at the boy who stood barefoot in the chilling night air. "Hey there," John said softly, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I'm John. What's your name?" The boy looked at him with wide, haunted eyes, his lips trembling. "Leo," he whispered. "Okay, Leo," John replied gently, placing his jacket around the woman's shoulders. Her cheek was icy against his sleeve, her breath ragged. John peeled off his own flannel and wrapped it around her, knotting it beneath her chin. "Let's get you somewhere warm." He grabbed the length of rope from the toolbox in the back of his truck, an old camping haulover he always kept on hand, and used it to drag the woman's legs steady as he hoisted her into his arms. Though slight, her weight told him she hadn't eaten in days. Leo shuffled forward, holding John's hand as they climbed the shallow embankment. Each step was a promise: you're not alone now. Back in the cab, John eased the woman onto the passenger seat and adjusted the seatbelt beneath her shoulder. Leo climbed into the back and curled on the bench arms wrapped protectively around his small frame. John spared a glance in the rearview mirror. Leo's silhouette stared back at him, determination outlined against the dark glass. No sirens, no flashing lights. John didn't call 911. He'd seen too many stories where help arrived with more damage than healing, where the system failed those it was meant to protect. Instead, he turned his truck toward the ridge and the little cedar cabin he'd built with his own hands. Each mile carried them further from that forgotten road and deeper into the promise of safety he hoped his home could provide. The cabin came into view just as the moon cleared the clouds, its windows dark and welcoming. John cut the engine and climbed out, bracing Leo's small shoulders with a firm hand. Together they carried the woman inside her weight, a silent testament to the violence she'd survived. John laid her gently on his sofa, propping her head on a folded quilt. Leo perched by her side, eyes brimming with tears he refused to shed. Inside the cabin smelled of pine and Sunday mornings, old coffee grounds, a hint of bacon, drippings, and the lingering warmth of yesterday's fire. John stripped off Boots' jacket, even his shirt, and stoked the dying embers in the hearth. He poured water into a heavy pot and set it on the wood stove, the clap of the lid echoing in the quiet room. Leo watched him go, then reached for his mother's hand, pressing it to his cheek, as if to reassure himself that she was still there. Moments later, John returned with a hot rag and a mug of warm milk. He knelt beside the sofa and gently dabbed at the woman's grazed temple. She flinched but did not awaken, and John murmured an apology for each sting, his voice hushed with concern. "We're going to be okay," he whispered, knowing the words were as much for himself as for her. Leo glanced between John and his mother, his young face etched with exhaustion and fear. "Will she live?" he asked, voice small. John placed a steady hand on Leo's shoulder. "Yes," he said, his tone firm. "She's going to live. I promise." He helped Leo to a chair by the fire and handed him a wool blanket. "Keep her warm for me, okay?" Leo nodded, wrapping the blanket around his mother's shoulders with trembling care. Then he stepped back and leaned against the arm of the chair, watching his chest rise and fall in quiet rhythm. John took a deep breath, his shoulders loosening for the first time since that skid on the gravel. Throughout the night, John tended to them both, fetching towels, boiling water, checking pulses and handing out warm sips of tea. Leo dozed on the sofa beside his mother, head resting on his folded arms. John slipped into his own bed only when the first light of dawn brushed the horizon, the hum of cicadas trading places with the wind in the cottonwoods. Morning in the cabin arrived like a benediction. Sunlight filtered through the lace curtains dancing on the wooden floor. John woke to the sound of soft moans and slid from his bed to check on them. Leo sat up, eyes glassy but alert, brushing crumbs from his mother's chin. Her eyes opened, and for a heartbeat she looked around as if emerging from a dream. "Where am I?" she whispered, voice cracked but alive. "Safe," John said, lowering himself to one knee. "You're safe here." He smiled gently, offering her a mug of coffee. She blinked at the bitter warmth, then looked down to see Leo standing beside her, small hand offering a strawberry. With the first sip and the sweet taste of berry, the woman, now Anna, let dirt and blood be washed away by the kindness of strangers and the soft glow of home. Leo slid onto the floor to hug his mother's knees, his small face pressed against her side. John watched them, chest tight with unshed emotion. In that quiet cabin, a new chapter had begun, one born of mercy, knitted with hope, and held together by the unwavering promise of second chances. Anna's first sensation was heat, a gentle, creeping warmth that chased away the ache in her bones. She blinked against the soft glow of morning sunlight filtering through cedar-paneled walls, catching the swirling motes of wood smoke dancing in the air. The scent was unfamiliar but comforting, like an old friend's embrace. Her head felt heavy, as if she'd slept too long on a damp forest floor. She turned her cheek and felt the softness of a quilt beneath her. The rattling echoes of last night's splintered world had faded into the steady rhythm of her own breath. A low murmur drifted through the room, and she opened her eyes, fully startled to see a simmering cast-iron pot perched on the wood stove. Steam curled from its spout in lazy tendrils. In the soft clink of spoon against metal, she realized she was listening to the promise of soup. She attempted to sit up, but pain lanced through her ribs and forced her back onto the mattress. A groan escaped her lips. "Mom." A small voice quivered with concern. Anna's eyes focused on a little girl standing in the doorway. Golden curls tumbling around a face framed by big, curious eyes. 6-year-old Emily Miller, John's daughter, crept forward, holding a bowl in both hands as though it contained the world's most fragile treasure. "It's okay," Emily whispered, voice steady, with a kindness that belied her years. "Soup's cool enough now. You should eat." She offered the bowl like a gift. Anna's throat felt parched. She tried to speak, but only a dry rasp emerged. Emily's lip trembled. "Here," she said, lifting the bowl to Anna's lips and tipping it gently so the fragrant broth brushed Anna's tongue. Warmth spread from her mouth down to her chest. She closed her eyes, savoring each sip. The taste was simple vegetable salt, perhaps a hint of herbs, but it was nourishment, not just for her body, but for her soul. Nearby, John appeared in the doorway, worn jeans and a flannel shirt dusted with ash. His shoulders slumped as he took in the scene, his daughter offering soup to a stranger. The stranger's eyes glistening with gratitude and pain. Without a word, he crossed the room and knelt beside Anna, resting a steady hand on her arm. "How do you feel?" he asked, his voice as soft as the quilt beneath her. Anna blinked twice, gathering strength. "Hungry," she managed. "And safe." John's eyes softened. He glanced at Emily and then at Leo, who stood behind his mother in the dim hallway, clutching the blanket John had wrapped around him. The boy's lips pressed into a firm line, eyes guarded. John nodded and rose. "That stew should be ready soon," he said. "I made enough for all of us." He turned and called over his shoulder, "Emily, can you help me with the spoons?" Emily nodded and darted off. John knelt again, placing a mug of warm water at Anna's side. "Drink," he said. "It'll help the pain." As Anna sipped, John dipped a clean rag in the pot of hot water and wrung it out, then pressed it gently to her bruised cheek. The heat stung, a sharp reminder of bruises that had not yet faded, but Anna found herself leaning into the comfort of his careful touch. He wiped her brow, his eyes meeting hers in a silent promise. "I won't let anything happen to you." The cabin door creaked open, and Emily returned cradling a wooden bowl and a carved spoon. Behind her came Leo, stepping softly, dreadlocks damp with dew from the night's crawl through nowhere. His eyes were cautious, calculating whether this place was truly safe. When he saw the bowl Emily carried, though, something fluttered in his chest. He held out his hand, and Emily placed the second bowl in it. Together they approached Anna and John. "Thank you," Anna whispered to Emily, voice thick with gratitude. She swallowed the rest of the broth and placed the bowl on the small table beside the bed. I don't know how to repay you." Emily shrugged. "You don't have to." Then more quietly, "It's what Dad would do." She slipped away, leaving Anna's words hanging in the air. John stood and smoothed the front of his shirt, almost like a father stifling tears. "Let me get you something clean." He disappeared into the bathroom, returning with a folded set of jeans and a soft shirt. Anna caught her breath at the simple generosity of it. Dirt and blood still stained her clothes from yesterday's horror. She accepted the garments, fumbling with them, uncertain of her body's ability to dress itself. Leo hovered in the entryway, shoulders rounded. He spoke in a hushed tone. "Mom, can I stay by you?" He took a step forward, vulnerability cracking his voice like thin ice. Anna looked at him and stroked his hair, matted and chafed. "Of course," she said, voice strong despite her weakness. John returned and offered to help. Together they lifted Anna from the bed, supporting her weight as she changed into the fresh clothes. Each movement brought jolts of pain, but John made no hurry. He tied the jeans waistline gently, then helped her into the shirt, protecting her bruised ribs from sudden jolts of fabric. When they finished, Anna recognized tears in Leo's eyes, mirrored in Emily's. She grasped Leo's cold hand and squeezed. "You're safe here," Anna whispered to Leo, then to John and Emily. "Thank you." John nodded. "You're part of this family now, the same as she is." He put his hands on both children's shoulders. "We look after each other." They settled around a rough-hewn pine table as the stew bubbled over in its pot. The three children, Emily, Leo, and Anna, ate quietly, sharing steamy spoons of stew. John watched them, pride and relief shading his expression. When Leo finished his bowl, he looked up at Anna. "More?" he asked softly. She nodded, placing her hand on his back. Emily scooted close. "Here," she said, ladling a second serving into his bowl. "You need it." With full bellies and calmer hearts, the tension in Anna's body eased. She let out a long breath. Leo hummed a soft tune, the first melody that had sung in his lips since their flight. Emily joined in, clear and bright. John stepped to the doorway and called into the kitchen, "Can I get you anything? Honey tea bread?" Anna shook her head. "No, John. This is perfect." She leaned back in her chair to watch Leo and Emily's dancing silhouettes in the firelight. In the surrender of her walls, she found herself trusting these new companions. After the meal, John cleared the table while Anna and the children moved to the sofa by the hearth. He returned with blankets and pillows. "Why don't you rest here for a bit?" he suggested. "I'll fetch some towels and water for a bath." Anna agreed, and John disappeared. Alone with the children, Anna felt something she hadn't dared feel in months: belonging. Leo nestled into her side, small hand tucked into hers. Emily pressed her cheek to Anna's shoulder. Together they closed their eyes and listened to the fire crackle and the wind sigh outside. In that simple moment, surrounded by kindness, warmth, and safety, Anna realized she was no longer alone in a hostile world. John returned quietly with a basin of hot water soap and fresh towels. He knelt beside Anna, filling the basin and testing the water's warmth. With professional gentleness, he washed the dried stains from her hair and face. The act was intimate, a gesture of trust neither of them took lightly. Anna closed her eyes and let the soap and water carry away the residue of fear and pain. When he finished, John wrapped her in a towel and helped her to the bedroom, a corner of the cabin he'd left ready for a guest. He laid her on the bed and covered her with the quilt. "Sleep," he said softly. "We'll talk in the morning." He kissed her forehead and stepped away, allowing Anna's lids to drift shut. Down the hall, John checked on Leo and Emily. Leo had fallen asleep, clutching Emily's hand, Emily's head resting on Leo's shoulder. John covered them carefully, then crept back to the hearth and stirred the embers, coaxing a few new flames to life. He offered a silent prayer of gratitude that he'd been in the right place at the right time. Outside, the wood smoke that had awakened Anna this morning rose in a gray column against the forested ridge. The sun rose too, painting the cabin's cedar walls gold. Inside the battered mother, the barefoot boy, the steadfast stranger and his daughter, lay in the gentle sanctuary built by unexpected kindness. In that quiet cedar refuge, a new story had taken root, one of healing trust and a promise that no matter how dark the road, compassion could light the way home. Anna woke to the faint ache of pain blooming in her ribs, sharp, insistent, a reminder that her body had been betrayed. She lay motionless for a moment, listening to the steady tick of the wall clock and the distant hum of birds outside. Her gaze drifted to the ceiling's knotty pine beams. Yesterday's terror still clung to her like a shadow, but here in this cabin the shadows felt kinder. She tested her breathing, first slow inhale, cautious exhale, and felt a stab beneath her right shoulder. Gingerly, she shifted on the mattress, propping herself on one elbow. Metal and cloth protested under her weight. She pressed a hand to the brace John had fashioned, the duct tape and fishing line scratchy but secure. The warmth of the quilt beneath her sent a timid comfort through her chest. She closed her eyes, willing the pain to fade. Hey, John's voice came from the doorway, low and gentle, as if afraid to startle her. He knelt beside the bed, handing her a mug of tea. Steam curled between them, pale and fragrant. "Morning," he said. "How are we feeling?" Anna offered a stiff nod. Stiff, she admitted, her voice rough and sore. He smiled, eyes soft. Expected. He laid the mug on the nightstand. "No doctors, no police. Just rest food, and if you need anything else, you let me know." Agreed. She met his gaze, the gray light of dawn highlighting both his tenderness and resolve. Agreed, she whispered. The promise was simple but profound, a lifeline in her world of chaos. Behind John, the cabin door clicked open again. Leo crept in, clutching a folded blanket. His face was drawn with caution, but his eyes, those dark, clever eyes, held a glimmer of trust. Emily followed at his heels, her pajamas, too big hair still in tousled pigtails. She carried a hot water bottle with a floral cover, pressing it into Anna's free hand. "Here," Emily murmured, perching on the edge of the bed. "Daddy said this will help with the ribs." Anna managed a small, grateful smile. The warmth seeped through her bandages, radiating relief. "Thank you," she said, her voice steadier. Leo hovered beside Emily, silent but present, as if he understood the ritual of care. Anna reached out and patted his hand. "Thank you, Leo, too." He nodded, the tension easing from his small shoulders. A moment passed, and Anna realized she wasn't alone in this fight. She blinked back, tears she hadn't known were waiting. John moved to the window, pulling aside the curtain to let in more light. The forest beyond the glass was waking to autumn's palette, gold and crimson leaves stirring in a gentle breeze. It was peaceful here, a world away from the anger and violence that had driven Anna and her son to the roadside. "Eat something," John encouraged, returning with a plate of warm toast and scrambled eggs. He set it on Anna's lap. Emily scooted closer, holding a second plate for Leo. The children ate quietly, leaning in to whisper jokes to each other, and occasionally to Anna. Leo's lips twitched in amusement. Emily's bright blue eyes twinkled with mischief. They shared a secret language of smiles and nods that melted the last of Anna's reserve. "Do you like jam?" Emily asked, lifting a small jar of wild blueberry preserves. Leo pointed to his toast, 2 thumbs up. Anna tasted the soft, sweet burst of berries and closed her eyes. "Delicious," she said. "You made good jam." Emily beamed. "Grandma taught me." Anna's chest tightened at the mention of her own mother. She hadn't spoken of her family in a long time, no one asked. But here Emily and Leo offered connection without interrogation. It felt safe. John watched from the edge of the hearth as the trio ate. When they finished, he brought over a basin of warm, soapy water and a soft towel. "Let's get you cleaned up," he said, offering a gentle nod toward the small wash basin by the door. Anna hesitated, then allowed him to help. She sat at the basin while John poured water and gently dabbed at the dried blood on her arms and collarbone. His hands were sure but light, respectful of the pain. She closed her eyes, letting the water wash away the grime and fear. Leo and Emily knelt beside her, each holding a clean washcloth. They helped John, handing him the cloths or silently dipping them in the basin. The 3 of them worked together, an unspoken covenant of care that stretched between them. When Anna's skin was clean and her hair brushed free of leaves and twigs, she felt for the first time since her escape that she could breathe fully. She looked at Leo and Emily, her heart swelling. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. Emily tilted her head. Just stay, she offered. Be our friend. Leo nodded. His smile was shy but unequivocal. Anna felt tears slip down her cheeks, but these were good tears, tears of gratitude and hope. John returned with fresh clothes, soft plaid flannel, and Henley folded and warm from the dryer. He handed them to Anna. Here, he said, get dressed when you're ready. Anna stood every movement mindful of her healing frame. Leo and Emily moved to stand guard at the door, giving her the privacy she needed. She slipped into the clothes, wincing but determined. When she emerged, each child gave her an approving nod. John wrapped the quilt around her shoulders again and guided her to the rocking chair by the fire, where he'd set a bowl of oatmeal topped with brown sugar and butter. The scent coaxed another appreciative sigh from her. She accepted the bowl on her lap, and Leo climbed onto the floor beside her head resting on her knee. Emily sat in the chair's crook, leaning in to feed Anna a spoonful of oats. They ate together, a family in formation. No questions about last night's horrors, no probes into her past, just a shared meal and the promise of quiet healing. When the bowl was empty, Anna leaned back, exhaling. She glanced at John, Leo, and Emily, each offering her a small, encouraging smile. John rose and walked to the corner where a battered guitar rested against the wall. He strummed a few soft chords, filling the cabin with gentle music. Leo's eyes shone as he recognized the melody from last night's humming. Emily reached over to touch Anna's arm. They're singing for you, she said. Anna closed her eyes, letting the music wash through her. In the silence between the notes, she heard something fragile stirring hope. The promise that here in this cedar refuge, she and Leo could begin to stitch the fragments of their lives back together. No system, no courtroom judgments, no whispered rumors in sterile hospital halls. Only this healing sanctuary and the unspoken pledge of two children and a stranger to stand by their side. When the song ended, John rose and knelt before Anna. Rest, he said. I'll watch the kids. He gestured toward Leo and Emily, who were already busy planning a blanket fort by the fire. Anna leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to John's cheek. Thank you, she murmured. He nodded, not needing words in return. As John stepped away, Anna settled back into the rocking chair. Leo crawled into her lap and Emily curled up at her feet. The three of them rocked gently, lulled by the soft crackle of wood and the quiet beating of new trust. Outside, the wind rustled the cottonwoods, but inside, Anna felt secure for the first time in a long while. She closed her eyes, allowing herself the luxury of peace, knowing that whatever lay ahead, she was not alone. John slid 2 plates of scrambled eggs and toast onto the table, steam rising in lazy curls beneath the low-hung kitchen light. The sun had barely crept above the pines, painting the cabin in soft amber. Anna wrapped her fingers around a mug of coffee, so strong it stung the back of her throat, grateful for its warmth. Leo and Emily sat side by side, passing a bowl of fresh fruit back and forth as they whispered their morning observations. John poured himself a mug and took the seat across from Anna, setting his cup down with a soft thump on the wooden tabletop. For a moment they ate in companionable silence. The crackle of the stove and the birdsong through the open window were the only sounds. Anna's fingers toyed with the handle of her mug, twisting it in slow circles. The bruise on her cheek had faded to a bruised purple, and she flexed a rib cautiously, no sharp twinges today. She took a sip of coffee and let the flavor ground her, giving her courage. How long have you lived here? She asked John, voice low. His gaze met hers, steady behind the steam of his coffee. 5 years, he said, lifting a forkful of eggs. Moved out of the city after everything. He swallowed and added, It felt right starting over where no one knew me. Anna followed his gaze to the cracked photograph on the mantel, John and a little boy fishing poles in hand, both grinning, a single faded Polaroid. Anna's chest tightened at the sight. She knew that look of memory and longing. She cleared her throat and set down her mug. Tell me about him, she said softly. John's fork paused midway to his mouth. He exhaled as if releasing a weight. His name was Caleb. He began, voice crackling like old leather. He would have been 8 this year. He took a breath. He loved fishing more than anything. Every summer morning, I'd carry him down to the lake before sunrise. We'd sit in silence, just waiting for the bobber to dip. His hands closed around the mug knuckles, whitening. He got sick leukemia. We did everything we could, but he was too young. He blinked. I watched him slip away. He sipped his coffee, eyes distant. After that, the city felt too loud, too crowded with memories. I needed space to find him again. Anna saw the pain in his eyes, a storm held back by the calm of his expression. She reached across the table and laid a hand over his. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. He squeezed her hand, offering a small, grateful nod. John cleared his throat and shifted. "Your turn," he said gently. Anna felt her pulse quicken. She inhaled the coffee scent and let it steady her. "My in-laws," she began, they never approved of me. Not after my husband died." She paused, remembering the oppression. His family was wealthy, prominent. "They blamed me for his death, said I didn't care enough, that I'd poisoned his mind with doubt." Her voice cracked. "They hurt me in ways I'm still not sure I can name. One night they locked me in the pantry, no windows, no phone, until I promised I'd give up my son." She drew a shaky breath. "I knew they'd hurt Leo next, so I ran. We drove until the lines on the map stopped making sense." John's brow knit. "You ran all the way here?" She nodded. "By myself with 6-year-old Leo in the back seat crying for breakfast. We had nothing but snacks and a prayer." Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought this was the end, but then you stopped." Her voice trembled. "You saw us. You stopped your truck." John pressed his lips together, blinking away his own tears. "You shouldn't have had to run," he said softly. "Nobody should." Anna swallowed and found a measure of strength in his words. "I didn't know if I could keep you safe," she admitted. "I thought hiding was the only way." She looked at Leo and Emily, heads bent together, oblivious. "But Leo, he deserved more." John nodded. "He deserved safety." He rose from the table and pulled a folded note from his pocket, placing it before Anna. "I found this in your purse." She opened it, a drawing Leo had made last night, 3 stick figures under a heart. Her heart clenched. "It says, 'Thank you, Daddy,'" John said. Anna's tears spilled free. "He's already forgiving me," she whispered. John knelt beside her again, brushing her tears with his thumb. "You're doing more than surviving," he said. "You're giving him a home." Their eyes locked in a promise neither spoke aloud. Outside, the wind stirred the pines in soft applause. Anna exhaled, feeling her broken pieces knit with John's own. In that cabin kitchen over coffee and scrambled eggs, 2 battered souls had found refuge in shared stories. They had shed the worst of their pasts into open air and discovered at last that surviving could mean learning to breathe again together. The late afternoon light slanted through the workshop's high window painting, dust motes gold in the air. Shelves of gauges, oil cans, and half-finished wooden toys lined the walls. In the center stood John Blake's workbench, a sturdy slab of oak scarred by decades of chisels and hammers. On one edge sat a battered cuckoo clock, its hands frozen at 2:05, its glass face cracked and grimy with neglect. John ran a calloused finger over its painted birdhouse facade and sighed. He'd meant to fix it weeks ago, but life had a way of crowding out small passions. He glanced at Leo Dart, who stood across the bench, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The 6-year-old's slender fingers hovered over the clock's side panel, as if reading its silent plea. John had just explained the basics, how the gears should mesh where the pendulum hung, but Leo seemed to already know. He lifted a tiny screwdriver with the precision of a surgeon and eased the back cover off. John leaned forward. "Careful with that cog," he warned softly, but Leo only nodded, blue eyes focused. One by one, the gears emerged: a sunburst wheel, a ratcheting escapement, a slender pinion. Each piece Leo laid on a faded cloth with deliberate care. He touched nothing else, as though the wood chips and sawdust around him existed in another world. John watched, chest tightening with awe. He remembered guiding his own small son's chubby hands across a simpler clock years ago. But Leo was different. He moved with calm intention, as if the mechanism's voice spoke directly to him. The boy's skin was pale, smudged with grease, and his hair had that wild curl Emily's pigtails sometimes adopted after playtime. Yet every motion he made was controlled exact. "Where'd you learn this?" John asked, stepping closer. Leo glanced up, expression thoughtful. "I read about escape wheels," the boy said. "They control the tick." He turned back to the parts. "And this is the verge that lets the pendulum swing." His words stumbled over big vocabulary, but he spoke them with ease as if the clock's essence lived inside him. John's breath caught. I didn't teach you that. He wiped a hand across his flannel. You just know it. Leo gave a quick shrug, then set to work. He lifted the largest gear and placed it on its arbor, wincing at the stiff resistance. John handed him a dropper of oil, and Leo coaxed a bead of lubricant onto the pivot. Less is more, he said, echoing John's own favorite motto. John swallowed, blinking hard. The boy was recalling instruction he'd never given. Moments later, the final gear clicked into place. Leo slid the back panel on and tightened the last screw. He lifted the clock and set it on the bench's edge. With an air of ceremony, he pulled the silver chain, letting the weight drop, and began the slow swing of the pendulum. The clock ticked soft, even alive. John's jaw dropped. Leo. He began voice cracking. The clock's cuckoo door sprang open with a gentle click, and a tiny wooden bird emerged, shifting its painted head once before retreating. Then it emerged again. The familiar cuckoo echoed through the workshop, delicate and precise. Leo's face broke into a grin, bright and triumphant. Emily, who had slipped in the back doorway, let out a gasp of delight. She'd been watching from the threshold, worried her brother wouldn't manage it. John crossed the last few feet to stand beside the boy. He laid a hand on Leo's shoulder. You did that, he said softly, as if afraid to wake a dream. You really did it. Leo shrugged again, as nonchalant as a child who built sandcastles. It just needed fixing, he said. John knelt to eye level. You understand how it works, he said. That takes something special. Leo nodded. Then his expression dipped. My dad, he used to fix clocks too. He died before I was 6. He paused, gaze drifting to the floor. I think he'd be proud. John's heart tightened. He reached for Leo's small hand and squeezed. I think he is. Emily stepped forward, wrapping her arms around both of them. Can we hang it in the cabin? She asked. Right over the fireplace, John glanced at the clock, its pendulum still swinging. The cuckoo's faint chime echoed once more. He looked down at Leo, then at Emily, then nodded. Sure, it'll remind us every hour of hope and second chances. Leo beamed, and Emily hopped up and down with excitement. John rose and scooped Leo into a hug, careful of his ribs. Let's get it home, he said. They carried the clock out of the workshop, its steady ticking following them down the cedar hallway, a heartbeat restored by the gentle genius of a boy who'd stepped out of darkness into a sanctuary built on mercy and the promise that even broken things can sing again. Sunlight poured through the leaves of the ancient oak, dappling the yard in gold and emerald. The air smelled sweet, with early summer's first blossom, and the yard rang with the soft thump of sneakers on grass. Emily Miller stood at the base of the tree, her hands cupped at her waist like a coach's whistle. Leo Dart hovered behind her, gaze fixed on the lowest branch brows, furrowed with determination and fear. Okay, Emily called, voice bright. Place your left hand here, right hand on the knot, then kick up with your right foot. She demonstrated, planting her hands firmly on the trunk and swinging her right leg to rest her foot in a crook of bark. Leo swallowed hard, toe nudging the spot Emily's shoe had marked. The knot was rough against his nylon sock, but it gave just enough purchase. He reached out, fingers trembling, and caught the knot. He glanced down as if the yard stretched into an abyss below him. Then he looked at Emily, who nodded with steady encouragement. Just like that, she said. Now shift your weight and bring up your left foot. Leo's face tightened as if he were bracing to leap from a cliff, but Emily's calm presence gave him courage. He pressed his other foot against the bark and rose on tiptoes, chest puffing with effort. A laugh escaped him, fright mixed with pride, and he lifted both feet to rest on Emily's knot. I'm up, he said, voice triumphant. Emily giggled. Told you could do it. She pointed higher. Want to try the next branch? Leo peered upward, eyes tracing the curve of the trunk to where the next branch beckoned. He nodded, heart pounding. Hand over hand, he climbed Emily's face, alight with pride and excitement. At the third branch, he froze, chest heaving. I'm scared, he admitted, voice small. Emily slid down to stand beside him on the lowest branch. She held out a hand. It's okay to be scared, she said. Just take it slow, and I'll always be right here. She lifted a foot up to the second branch, then reached down to guide Leo's hand to rest on her ankle. Together. Leo braced himself and took Emily's hand. Their fingers met across the gap between branches, a bridge of trust. With Emily's guidance, he found his second foothold and rose until they stood side by side, two small silhouettes outlined against the sky. Leo's grin was wide enough to split his face. "I can see the whole yard," he marveled. Emily scooted forward to the edge of the branch and dangled her legs. Leo followed suit, their feet bobbing in tandem. Below them, the cabin's cedar walls gleamed and the workshop window caught a flicker of movement, Anna peeking out to make sure they were safe. When John stepped onto the porch with a whistle, the children waved. He watched them for a moment, pride warming his gaze before calling up, "Dinner's almost ready, you two. Hop down before it gets too dark." Emily and Leo exchanged a glance. Then with practiced ease and Leo's newfound confidence, they climbed down branch by branch until their feet touched the earth. Emily pumped her fist. "You did it, Leo." He returned the fist bump with a laugh. "Thanks to my coach." Then he turned to John. "Can I come help Anna bake bread?" John's eyes sparkled. "I'll let her decide." He led them inside, hair still smelling of pine and sunshine. In the kitchen, Anna stood at the counter dusted with flour. Her sleeves rolled to her elbows and her hair tied back in a loose braid. The aroma of yeast and warm dough filled the air. She smiled at the sight of Leo and Emily entering in a triumphant pair. "Want to help?" she asked, wiping her hands on a tea towel. Leo nodded eagerly, glancing at the bowl of dough on the counter. Emily stepped forward, first sprinkling more flour onto the wooden countertop. "We'll need extra flour," she declared, sweeping up a small mound and patting it into her palms. Anna laughed, a sound light and free, not tinged with past sorrow. "Good idea," she said. She handed Leo a ball of dough that had been resting under a damp cloth. "Give this a knead." Leo placed his hands on the dough, and with guidance from Anna, he folded and pressed it, feeling the softness yield beneath his palms. Anna watched him, her expression soft. "You're a natural," she said. "Feels good, right?" Leo smiled, his blonde hair falling into his eyes as he worked. "It's like soft clay," he said. Beside him, Emily shaped smaller rolls, pinching edges with meticulous care. Anna moved down the counter, dusting sugar in a pan for tomorrow's cinnamon buns. "When I was little," she said, sliding the rolls onto a baking sheet, "my mom taught me how to bake every Sunday. It was our tradition." She paused, looking at Leo and Emily. "I'd bake all morning, then we'd sit out on our porch and eat coffee cake as a family." Emily and Leo stole a look at each other. In their new chosen family, there were no grandparents to hand down traditions, yet here was Anna passing on hers. John stepped in with a tray of fresh berries. "Would you two like to help me make a fruit topping?" he asked, holding up strawberries and blueberries. Leo's hand shot up. "Yes, please." Anna's eyes met John's with warmth. Together, the five of them, 2 adults and 2 children, and a rescued mother worked side by side, stirring sugar into berries, kneading dough, wiping flour from their noses. Laughter rose like steam, light and sweet. Emily's spoon clattered into a bowl, and she giggled as John teased her about her musical performance. Leo's dough slipped free from his fingers and slapped onto the counter, causing a delighted squeal. Anna scooped him into a hug, her heart tightening with joy. This was childhood, rekindled small moments of play and learning, each a brick building the walls of their new home. The oven timer pinged, and John opened the door to reveal golden loaves and rolls puffed to perfection. He ushered everyone back to the table, and they shared the warm bread with butter melting into every crack, while the kitchen window framed a last glimpse of dusk settling over the yard. Later, as the children washed sticky hands while Anna played with soap bubbles, John stacked the fresh loaves on a cooling rack. He caught Anna's eye and nodded toward the living room where Emily was teaching Leo a clumsy dance step to a tune they'd invented in the yard. Anna smiled, a soft light in her eyes. When the kitchen glowed only with lantern light, Anna tucked the children into their blankets on the sofa, eyelids heavy. She lingered a moment to brush Leo's hair and tuck his blanket around him, then knelt beside Emily to press a kiss to her forehead. Leo and Emily drifted to sleep with smiles lingering on their faces. Proof that laughter and safety could knit up wounds in ways comfort and play provided. John emerged from the kitchen with 2 mugs of cocoa and offered one to Anna. They settled into the rockers by the hearth, the oven's warmth still swirling through the room, and the promise of fresh bread tomorrow lingering in the air. Outside, the oak's silhouette stood sentinel against the night sky. Its branches, once a climb conquered by two small adventurers, now whispering lullabies to the cabin below. Anna sipped her cocoa and let out a contented sigh. "Today was wonderful," she said, voice soft. John nodded, eyes tracing the flicker of firelight over her face. It was he agreed. "We're building something good here." Anna's gaze shifted to the doorway where the children slept and then back to John. "Thank you for letting us in." He reached out, covering her hand with his. "We chose each other," he said, "and I'm grateful every day." Their hands tightened around each other's, and for a moment the soft glow of bread baking and children laughing seemed to fill every corner of the world. In that quiet cabin, the echoes of yesterday's pain were replaced by the simple triumphs of children climbing oaks and kneading dough. Each shared laugh, each new tradition wove them together. Two families reborn under one roof. Childhood rekindled in the warmth of a chosen home. A low rumble drifted through the cabin just as the last embers in the hearth surrendered to the night. John glanced at the clock, 8:30. He'd promised the children one more story before bed, and he strode to the bookshelf to find a worn hardcover when the rumble he'd mistaken for distant highway traffic cracked into an urgent roar. Outside, wind whipped against the cedar walls, rattling the panes like urgent taps for help. Anna stood in the kitchen doorway, hand on the frame, as fat drops began to pelt the roof. "Is that thunder?" she asked, voice tight with tension. Leo and Emily had abandoned their fortress of couch blankets, standing frozen by the fireplace. John set aside the book and crossed the room. "Looks like a storm's rolling in," he said, pulling a lantern from the countertop. He lit it with a soft flick and carried it to the center of the room, its glow pushing back the shadows. Emily grabbed her stuffed fox Kip, clutching it close. Leo hovered by the window, his eyes wide as the trees bent in the gathering gale. Rain pounded the cabin in ragged sheets, the windows shuddering under each heavy drop. The wind howled, tugging at every loose shutter and stirring the curtains into frantic dance. In the kitchen, a loose pot clanged against the stove, its metal rim trembling. The cabin felt suddenly small, vulnerable. Anna's lower lip quivered. She'd managed the early days of recovery with a stoic grace, but the storm's fury unlocked something primal. Her breathing grew shallow. She wrapped her arms around herself as though bracing against the elements. "John," she whispered, voice shaking, "I can't do this." John dropped to one knee before her, gently lifting her hands away from her sides. "Hey," he said, voice calm but firm. "This is our home." He paused, letting the lantern's glow catch the mixture of fear and tears in her eyes. "You're safe here. You're not alone." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders and drew her close, careful of her healing ribs. Anna leaned into him, closing her eyes. "It's so loud," she breathed. "It's like it's chasing me." He brushed damp hair from her forehead. "I know." He shifted, pulling her toward the rocking chair Sal was once carved into. "Come sit with me." He guided her to the chair and she sank into the cushions. He sank beside her, the lantern between them. The wind's roar crescendoed, and in the pitch black beyond the windows, lightning jagged the sky. A crack sounded somewhere overhead, wood groaning under the storm's weight. Emily pressed Kip into her mother's lap, and Leo climbed onto the other side of John's chair, settling between his knees. John drew a slow breath, feeling the children's soft bodies breathe against him. He touched Anna's hand. "Tell me what you need." Anna swallowed. "I need this to stop." Her voice trembled with exhaustion. John's jaw tightened. "We can't stop the storm," he said quietly. "But we can ride it out together." He wrapped his free arm around both children. His hand drifted to Leo's hair, stroking the damp curls. "We're a team in here." Emily nodded against Anna's chest. "A storm team," she said in a half-whisper, as if declaring a secret club. Leo looked up in his small face solemn. "We keep each other safe," he agreed. Outside, a deafening crack spiked the air. Somewhere a tree limb splintered under the wind's weight. The cabin lurched with its thunderous landing. Anna squeezed her eyes shut, heart hammering. "Focus on us," John murmured. He began a soft, rhythmic humming, an old folk tune Caleb used to love. His voice was low, almost drowned in the storm, but the melody was familiar. Anna recognized it instantly. She'd heard the three of them sing together long ago. She reached for the children's hands and hummed along a fragile thread, weaving them together. Leo and Emily exchanged a glance, feet brushing. They hummed too tentative, but growing stronger in unison with John's baritone. Anna joined in, her voice shaky but true. The cabin filled with human warmth, a counterpoint to the storm's rage. Then in the heart of that solidarity, Leo's small hand slipped from John's and darted toward the front door. He shifted himself out of the rocking chair. "Wait!" Emily called, her voice urgent beneath the melody. John paused, peering at Leo. "Where are you going?" he asked. Leo's face went white. "Kip," he said. "I left him outside by the oak. I need to save him." Anna's chest tightened. Rain lashed against the door. The wind roared as if daring him to step outside. John's hand clenched around Leo's arm. "It's dangerous," he said, worry and pride wrestling in his tone. The storm, Leo's eyes glowed with fierce resolve. "He's my fox," Leo said. "I have to save him." Anna braced herself against the arm of the rocking chair. "Be careful," she called, voice small but firm. John nodded, lifting Leo into his arms. "All right," he said. "Let's go." He set the lantern on a stout stump by the door, its flame guttering in the rushing air. He tugged his jacket tight and opened the door. The storm's blast hit them like a wall. Rain and wind swirled around John and Leo as they squinted into the black. The yard had turned into a white blur of motion. John sloshed through the mud, Leo's small legs wrapped around his waist. He shielded the boy with his body. Each step was a slip, a fight for footing. Lightning arced overhead, revealing the oak's massive trunk and shattered branches, then vanishing into deeper darkness. John found the spot where Leo had left Kip, the ground bare under the oak's roots. Leo pointed body leaning against his father's shoulder. There, half buried in the mud, was the little fox, its fur matted, but its stitched button eye intact. John set Leo down carefully. "Stay low," he instructed, crouching to pat Leo on the back. "I've got you." He knelt and lifted Kip, mud-dripping and fabric-worn. Leo snatched the toy, pressing it to his chest like a lifeline. "Got you," Leo whispered, voice brimming with relief. John rose, chuckling despite the cold. "Good rescue," he said, lifting Leo back into his arms. He tucked Kip into the boy's jacket pocket. "Let's get back inside." Wind whipped around them again, but John and Leo sprinted wobbly, urgent steps toward the cabin light. Inside, Emily and Anna opened the door, faces aglow with worry and happiness. Emily wrapped Leo in a blanket as John let him down. Anna took Kip, brushing the worst of the mud from its fur. Leo held Kip to his chest and looked at Anna. "He's safe now," he said proudly. Anna's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, he is," she said, handing Kip back to Leo. She pulled him into a hug. "You're safe too," she added, cheek pressed to his hair. John closed the door against the storm. He moved to the rocking chair and gathered Leo on his lap, patting his back as the wind pounded the walls. Emily pressed against Anna's side, the three of them forming a circle of warmth. Anna wrapped an arm around Emily and draped the quilt over all of them. "We weathered it," she said softly, "together." John smiled, voice thick with feeling. "Storms don't break us," he said. "They show us what we're made of." Outside, the thunder subsided to distant growls, and the rain softened to a steady drum. Inside, the cabin glowed with lantern light and the soft breathing of a chosen family. Leo's fox lay nestled in his arms, a symbol of courage reclaimed. Anna closed her eyes, drawing strength from John's steady heartbeat beside her. Emily drifted to sleep, holding Anna's hand. In the hush that followed the storm, the cabin felt unbreakable, a haven forged by solidarity, courage, and the quiet promise that no matter how fierce the tempest, they would face it as one. That night, after the storm's fury had finally subsided to soft patters on the roof, Anna found herself unable to sleep. The flicker of the lantern in the hallway called to her, and she slipped from the rocking chair where Leo had dozed in John's arms. Emily was curled up on the sofa, still clutching Kip's small body against her chest. John lay in the spare room, snoring softly. Every part of this cabin exuded safety. Wood smoke, warm quilts, and the low hum of trust, but Anna's heart danced with unease. She wandered into John's workshop, the lantern casting long shadows on sawdust-flecked shelves. Her eyes fell on the old tin box he kept on the highest stack of crates. It was battered, but the latch still gleamed silver in the lantern light. John had told her it held his late son's keepsakes photos, letters, stray mementos. Curiosity and trepidation warred in Anna's chest. She climbed onto a stool and lifted the lid. Inside were postcards from distant fishing trips, a set of his son's first baby shoes, and a creased black and white photograph of John's wife pressing a tiny hand to a rocking cradle. At the bottom lay an envelope so out of place it made her fingers tingle, thick cream stock embossed with Marchand Industries in dark charcoal print. Her breath caught her late husband's family name, Marchand, burned in her memory. She let her fingertips trace the raised letters. She lifted it out, heart pounding. The paper felt heavy as though weighted by untold secrets. She tucked it beneath her shirt and silently retreated to the cabin's living room, where John was folding blankets by the hearth. The fire's low glow played across his features, warm and familiar. Anna stood in the doorway, the envelope pressed to her chest. John looked up, expression bleary. "Can't sleep?" he asked, voice thick with concern. Anna swallowed. There's something I need to ask." She held out the envelope. "What is this?" John's eyes widened as he recognized the stationery. He rose and crossed to her heart, thudding. "Where did you find that?" he asked quietly. "In your workshop," Anna murmured. Her pulse pounded so loud she feared he might hear it. I didn't mean to pry." John closed the distance, and Anna saw a flash of grief in his eyes. Then something else, an unspoken question, etched on his face. He reached out, touched the envelope with gentleness. "That arrived the day after I buried my son," he said softly. "I never opened it." Anna's chest tightened. "Open it," she urged. His hand hesitated on the latch, and in that pause, Anna realized this letter carried more than condolences. It bore the potential to reshape everything. John lifted the flap. The single sheet inside was written in fine, slanted script. He cleared his throat as Anna pressed close, lantern light trembling on both their faces. He read Mr. Blake. "My name is Edward Marchand. You do not know me, but we share a bond of loss. My son Michael was married to Anna Dart, your guest, and our boy's mother. After his passing, I thought I'd lost her as well. I have carried regret for not stepping forward when she needed protection. Enclosed is an invitation to meet, if she so chooses, and for our grandson Leo to claim his rightful place should he wish it in the Marchand legacy. No pressure, only a path offered. Sincerely, Edward Marchand." Anna's knees threatened to buckle. She sank onto the sofa, pressing a hand to her mouth. "Michael," she whispered. Her husband's name had been Marchand, an heir to one of the country's largest enterprises, and Leo was the grandson of the family patriarch Edward Marchand himself. She thought of the in-laws whose cruelty had driven her and Leo to this cabin's refuge. It was their name she carried, their inheritance Leo was born into. John knelt beside her. "I'm so sorry," he said, voice thick. He gently removed the letter and held it between them. "I never knew. I'm sorry I never told you." Anna shook her head, tears leaking free. "I didn't either. I didn't want to drag Leo into that world. I thought running would keep him safe." Her voice cracked. "But that letter—" She swallowed hard. "It changes everything." John offered her a ragged towel. She accepted it and wiped her tears. "Will you read it again?" she asked, voice small. He nodded. He retrieved the letter and read the lines once more, louder this time, for Anna to hear every promise and apology Edward had penned. Anna closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her. Each sentence carried the weight of abandonment and of hope. When he finished, silence settled heavy between them. Leo stirred on the sofa, blinking up at them. Emily opened one eye and yawned. The children's presence reminded Anna what mattered most, their safety and belonging. She reached for the letter. "I need to think," she said softly. She opened the letter again, touching Edward Marchand's signature as though it were a lifeline. John scooped the letter from her hands and slipped it into his pocket. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said kindly. "Whatever you choose, we face it together." Anna nodded, her heart a whirlwind of fears and possibilities. The cabin's warmth held them close as rain tapped gentle rhythms on the roof. She glanced at Leo, who hugged Kip, and peered at the envelope in John's pocket with wide curiosity. She pressed a kiss to his forehead. You belong to me, she whispered, voice sure, and to this family. She looked at John, gratitude shining through her tears. Thank you for being here, for not letting them take us. He took her hand, linking fingers. You're home, he said simply. Here, you're safe. In the hush that followed, Anna's mind raced with all the ways her son might claim his legacy. But for now, she would sleep on the promise of a meeting that might bring healing from past wounds. She leaned into John's warmth, the envelope's secret resting between them, like a promise that nothing hidden could resist the light of kindness and courage. Anna woke before dawn, the marshland mist curling around the cabin like whispered regrets. She lay in the bed John had prepared for her, staring at the ceiling's cedar planks as memories pressed in the slam of her in-laws' front door, their whispered promises to make things right. The panic in Leo's eyes as she drove through the night. She shivered not from cold, but from the weight of history. How could she ever face a courtroom again? How could she reclaim her name when it had been bent into accusations and lies? A soft knock on the door roused her. John slipped inside, coffee tray in hand. Leo lay sleeping beside Emily on the sofa, their small faces smooth with innocence. John set the tray down on the nightstand and perched on the edge of the bed. Morning, he said quietly, offering her a mug. Anna took it with both hands, breathing in the roast's comfort. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. I keep seeing their faces, my in-laws, and hearing their threats. She hurt her thumb on the rim, a small reminder of the bruises she'd hidden. I ran for his life, John. I didn't think I'd ever have to go back. John nodded, voice gentle. You did what any mother would. You protected Leo. But if you never stand up now, they'll keep you both hidden like you deserve shame. He paused, his gaze steady. You deserve your name. Leo deserves his future. Anna closed her eyes, the letter from Edward Marchand heavy in her purse like a promise and a threat all at once. Edward had offered a meeting in Olive Branch steeped in regret, but it was a start. The man who once rejected her was now extending his hand to rebuild the bridge she'd burned in self-preservation. She set her coffee down and swung her legs over the bed. I'm scared, she confessed. If I file against them, they'll come after us. They have money influence, power. John rose and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Then we'll match them with something more powerful, truth. And you've got me Emily and Leo, and whatever Edward Marchand brings to the table. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You're not alone in this fight. Anna felt tears slip free. She drew his shirt close. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how to start. He lifted her chin, his eyes bright. First, we gather everything. Medical records from the doctor after the pantry. She winced at the memory but nodded. He gave me stitches, recorded my bruises, but I never followed up. We'll get the copies, John said, already moving into problem-solving mode. Then we document Leo's custody through the letter you found. Edward's offer. That counts as acknowledgement of paternity and inheritance and protection. We'll have a family lawyer draw up a petition to the court. We're not asking for favors. We're demanding what you and Leo are owed. Anna pictured her trembling walk through the courthouse hallway, papers clutched tight in her hand. But John's certainty anchored her. Okay, she breathed. Let's do it. They worked side by side, John on the phone tracking down medical offices. Anna writing down the timeline of threats, abductions, the night in the pantry, and their flight. Leo and Emily sketched plans on the kitchen table. Leo drawing a courtroom with 2 doors labeled Truth and Justice, Emily adding hearts around it for hope. Their innocent artistry lifted Anna's spirit, reminding her that this battle was about them, not just her scars. By late afternoon, she had a folder thick with evidence, doctor's notes, a transcript of Edward's letter, a map of their flight path, and sworn statements from neighbors who had witnessed her collapse. John added a typed narrative woven with facts and emotion. We're ready, he said, sliding the folder across the table. Anna's hand shook as she picked it up. Tomorrow, John continued, we file. Then you'll stand before the judge Leo at your side and tell them your story. Anna looked at Leo curled asleep on the sofa. She imagined him older, strong in his Marchand legacy, but grounded by this cabin's love and the courage she'd taught him. She pressed the folder to her chest, heart swelling. For you, Leo, she whispered, kissing the sleeping child's forehead. That evening, after Emily and Leo were tucked into their beds, Anna and John sat in the soft lamplight. The folder lay between them like a pact. Anna ran her fingers over the embossed leather cover. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "What if they dismiss me?" John reached across and took her hand. "Then we appeal. And if that doesn't work, we go higher. You'll tell your story until the world listens, and I'll be right beside you." Anna looked at his unwavering expression and felt courage bloom. She folded her voice into his calm steadiness. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll stand in that courtroom and say, 'My name is Anna Marchand. My son is Leo Marchand. Don't you dare take that from us.'" John smiled, and for the first time in months, Anna felt a fierce pride ignite inside her, a fire that no threat, no memory of violence could extinguish. In the quiet cabin, their chosen home, they faced the storm heads of their past together. Tomorrow they would step out into a new dawn of truth, and no matter how powerful their opponent's solidarity and love would carry them through. A soft hum on the gravel driveway woke Anna before sunrise. She peered through the frost-laced window of John's cabin to see headlights slicing through the pre-dawn gloom. A long, low silhouette materialized under the oak branches, a vintage Rolls-Royce silver shadow chrome glinting in the headlight beam. Anna's heart stuttered. She pulled on boots and wrapped her robe tight, racing outside to meet John, who fumbled with the lantern. The Rolls-Royce glided to a stop as if it were sliding on ice rather than stones. The engine cut off, and the world held its breath. John stepped onto the porch lantern held high, followed by Anna and Leo, bleary-eyed and clutching Kip the fox toy. Emily hovered behind them, clutching her blanket. The morning's chill bit at their cheeks, but nobody moved from the threshold. The car door opened without a sound, and a tall man emerged, cane in hand, silver hair combed back from a dignified face. His dark overcoat hung perfectly over a tailored suit, and despite his years, he stood ramrod straight. Anna recognized him immediately. The patriarch Edward Marchand had spoken of her late husband's father, William Marchand. John swallowed. "Mr. Marchand," he said quietly, stepping forward and offering a tentative handshake. William Marchand's eyes, still sharp beneath dignified brows, rested on Anna's face, then Leo's. "Mr. Blake," he replied, voice calm but resonant. He shifted his cane, then extended his free hand to Leo. "Good morning, Leo. I'm your grandfather." Leo's small face froze an adult word unpacked in one breath. He glanced at Anna, searching her expression. She nodded, heart pounding. Leo took William's hand and shook it with surprising firmness. William's gaze softened. "Thank you for answering my letter," he said, voice pitched to carry to Anna's ears. "I realize I owe you an apology, Anna." His eyes met hers with no shield. "I failed you and my son when you needed protection. I cannot change the past, but I can offer my regret and my support." Anna's throat tightened. She recalled those threats from her in-laws, the coldness that had followed her husband's death like a shadow. "I thank you," she said softly, voice brittle with memories and confusion. William turned to John. "I arrived without lawyers, without fanfare. No power plays. I come as a family man." He tipped his head toward the rolls. "It's yours now, Leo. A trust has been set up in your name. Education funds property, the whole Marchand legacy, but I want him to grow up here in this cabin with his mother and Emily." He looked directly at Anna. "He needs no deserved stability and love above all else." John exchanged a glance with Anna. Surprise, relief, perhaps gratitude. "He does," John said, voice gruff with emotion. "This home has given him hope." William nodded. "Then he will remain here until he chooses otherwise." He sheathed the umbrella in his coat and extended the cane to John. "Would you help me with my luggage?" Together, John and William stepped toward the car where a leather bag waited on the running board. William lifted it with ease, belying his years, then limped toward the porch. Anna led the way back inside, Leo trailing behind his grandfather's cane taps. In the warmth of the cedar-paneled living room, William set the bag on the floor. Emily offered him a chair, and he accepted it with a gracious nod. Leo slipped his hand into Anna's, uncertainty flickering across his small face. Anna squeezed his hand, guiding him to perch on the arm of William's chair. William studied Leo as though reading a beloved book. "Your grandfather may be flawed," he said quietly, "but he is here now." He unclipped a small velvet box from his coat pocket and opened it, revealing a simple silver signet ring. "This was your father Michael's. He always found it how to carry responsibility with grace. I want you to have it, Leo, when you're ready. Leo's eyes tracked the ring, then locked with William's steady gaze. He nodded slowly, and William lifted his hand, pressing the ring onto Leo's small finger. It slipped on snugly. The boy's face shone with awe. A rumble of engines drew their attention to the window. Two black SUVs rolled into view, the only sign of security William had left behind. He followed Anna's gaze and stood. "They'll wait outside," he said, voice low. "Security protocols unfortunately unavoidable." He turned back to the family circle. "But right now I am just a grandfather. I'd like to get to know my grandson." Anna's eyes brimmed with tears. "Thank you," she said, voice catching, "for staying out of politics." William offered a small, wry smile. "I've learned that some battles are fought best with kindness." He looked at John. "And I owe you my gratitude, Mr. Blake, for protecting my daughter-in-law and grandson." He reached out his cane and placed a knot in John's shoulder. "Thank you." Outside, the security detail shifted a reminder that their moment of family peace existed within a larger world. But inside, Anna drew Leo close into her lap, and Emily climbed beside her. John and William stood behind them, a circle solidified by shared experience and renewed bonds. William paused as if weighing the moment. Then, in a voice gentle enough to hush the room's very walls, he spoke again. "Leo, you are more than the Marchand name. You are your mother's son and beloved by those who choose you. Never forget that." The boy nodded, eyes shimmering, and Anna pressed a kiss to his temple. John laid a hand on Anna's shoulder, and the three adults shared a quiet look, a pact silent but unbreakable. Then William leaned back, the signet ring glinting silver against Leo's sleeve. "Shall we have breakfast? I hear Mrs. Blake makes an excellent stew." John laughed quietly. "It's stew again, but I'll happily make it." Emily clapped her hands. "Yay, breakfast in blankets." Laughter warm and rich filled the cabin, a chorus of new beginnings woven with lessons from past failings. Outside, the security detail kept its distance as the Rolls-Royce stood guard on the gravel. Inside, three broken lives had found a way to mend in unity, bound by mercy, courage, and the promise of a chosen family. Sunlight filtered through the barn's weathered slats, painting long stripes across the dusty floorboards. The makeshift stage, a plank of stained oak resting on hay bales, stood ready beneath a banner crudely painted with bright letters. "Welcome." Neighbors, children, and even the judge, who had ruled in Anna's favor, milled through folding chairs, anticipation humming like bees in the warm air. Today was the ribbon cutting for the Ridge Hollow Learning Center, but before that Leo Marchand would speak the words that sealed his pledge to the name he'd chosen. Anna stood just off stage, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. Her heart pounded not with fear, she'd weathered far darker storms, but with pride. Only days ago, she'd sat before a skeptical courtroom, her bruises documented and her in-laws' cruelty laid bare. She'd presented medical records, sworn statements, even the letter from William Marchand acknowledging his grandson's rights. When the judge's gavel fell and declared her victory, granting full custody of Leo and forever severing her in-laws' hold, Anna had wept with relief. Now that same shining determination burned in her son's eyes. John stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Across the barn, Emily clutched her grandmother's old camera, ready to capture every moment. Anna took a deep breath, feeling the echo of every hardship she'd endured dissolve in the light of this new day. Leo emerged. Then his young frame dwarfed by the barrel-stave lectern but unbowed. He wore his polished shoes and the simple silver signet ring resting on his finger, Michael Marchand's ring, now his. He lifted both arms in a practiced gesture, and the crowd stilled an expectant hush falling over them. "Thank you all for being here," Leo began, voice steady, eyes bright under the barn's peaked roof. "I'm Leo Marchand. Until recently, my name meant nothing to me but pain and secrets. But now it means something I've earned, and that's why I'm not just accepting it. I'm vowing to earn it." He paused, letting those words settle. "I promise to honor the name Marchand through kindness, through hard work, and by helping others learn just like you helped me." He lifted Michael's ring to touch it. "I will make it my own, not by inheritance, but by my deeds." A ripple of applause swept through the barn. Anna felt tears prick her eyes as Leo stepped down each small stride, a testament to his courage. She joined John on stage, putting a hand to her son's shoulder. The judge rose from his seat, stepping forward to cut the ribbon stretched across the doorway. It fell away in a flourish of scarlet silk, and the crowd cheered. Inside, sunlight flooded the newly restored barn-turned-schoolhouse. Rows of mismatched desks, old doors repurposed into writing surfaces stood ready. Bookshelves lined the walls filled with donated volumes of every stripe, encyclopedias, storybooks, textbooks. A battered globe perched at the front, its equator ring scuffed from countless maps traced by eager fingers. Children darted between desks, marveling at the chalkboard's clean slate and the promise of lessons yet to come. Anna watched as William Marchand knelt beside a little girl, showing him how to swing chalk at the board. Though still guarded by his cane and his security detail, his smile was genuine, a man humbled by his grandson's vow. He caught Anna's eye and nodded, and she returned the gesture in unspoken truce and gratitude for this second chance. John moved through the aisles, greeting families who once hesitated at the rustic workshop door, but now beamed with hope. Neighbors brought warm casseroles, fresh fruit, and armfuls of school supplies. A local carpenter had built a reading nook in the loft, and students took turns climbing the ladder to rest among soft pillows, books in hand. Leo found Anna and John near the hearth, a repurposed wood stove heater transformed into a reading corner. He leaned into Anna's side. "I did it, Mom," he whispered. Anna kissed his temple. "You did more than do it, Leo," she replied. "You showed us all what this name can become." Emily crept up behind them, camera in hand. She snapped a photo. Anna's proud smile, John's steady presence, Leo standing tall with his ring. It was the image of a family remade. As the morning gave way to afternoon, John called everyone to gather for one final moment. He climbed onto a crate, clearing his throat. "Thank you everyone for making this possible," he said, voice carrying across the barn. "This school is more than a building. It's a promise that no child here will ever doubt their worth. We'll learn math and reading, history and science, but most importantly, we'll learn compassion and community." The crowd answered with applause that shook the rafters. Anna's eyes brimmed as she looked around at the faces she'd once feared, faces now turned to fellow travelers on the path of rebuilding. William stepped forward and added his own voice to the chorus. "I'm proud to join this community," he said. "Today, Ridge Hollow is more than a refuge. It's a beacon of hope." Leo climbed onto John's shoulders, pumping his fist. "Welcome," he shouted, echoing the banner above the doorway. Laughter and cheers followed, rising to meet the sunlit rafters, as if the barn itself joined in celebration. That evening, after the guests had gone home, and the last desk folded away, the four of them, Anna, John, Leo, and Emily, sat by the crackling hearth with mugs of cocoa. The quiet was different now, full of possibility, no longer heavy with fear. Leo bounced the ring on his finger as Emily recounted her favorite moments from the day. John stretched out on the rug, tracing the grain of the wood. Anna sipped her cocoa, heart swelling with gratitude. They closed their eyes to the warm glow, drawing in the shared triumph. Outside the barn stood silent under the early evening sky, a new heart beating within its walls. And inside, a chosen family held each other close, the crescendo of their homecoming echoing in every corner, promising that every name, no matter how broken, could become music in the right hands. The sun hovered low in the sky, stretching the day into a golden haze that draped the cabin in honeyed light. On the porch rail, a small mobile of paper cranes fluttered in the breeze. Each one a letter from William Marchand in the city, sent to Anna and Leo with gentle updates on the Marchand Foundation's support for their new school. Inside, Emily's laughter rang like wind chimes drifting from the kitchen, where she and Anna kneaded dough for evening biscuits. John watched them from the doorway, his heart full, as he held the latest letter in his hand, green ink looping across the page with fond gratitude. "Your community has become my greatest teacher." Leo darted past John, a paper airplane in his hand, giggling with reckless delight. He launched it toward the far wall, where it arced and landed with a soft thud beside the bookshelf. Emily turned to cheer him on. Again, Leo, again. The paper crane above them dipped in time to their joy, as if the cabin itself were joining in celebration. Anna set down the rolling pin and wiped her hands on her apron, her braided hair glowing in the evening light. "Looks like someone's ready for a flight lesson," she teased, leaning against the counter. John beckoned Leo over, ruffling his curly hair. "All right, Captain," he said, offering the letter. "Time for dispatches from the city." Leo slid onto John's lap, eyes bright with anticipation. He unfolded the letter carefully, as if it were a treasure map, and read aloud, "Dear Leo, Emily tells me you've mastered the paper plane. Perhaps you'll teach me next time I visit. The Foundation's summer reading program has your school at the top of its list. Keep building, keep dreaming. Your grandfather William." He handed the letter back with solemn pride. Emily applauded. "That's amazing. We're famous." She circled Leo, then swept into the hallway to gather her own letters. Dozens of crumpled crayon-scribbled pages meant for the Marchand office's invitations to picnics reports on how many school supplies they'd made, doodles of tractors and solar systems. She launched one at John's forehead, giggling as it bounced off his temple. "That one's from me," she said, grinning. "It's a drawing of our school." Anna swept Emily into a hug, catching the paper airplane on its return trajectory. "And it's perfect," she whispered. Night settled over the hill, and the cabin's windows glowed like lanterns calling home weary travelers. Inside, boards creaked with the weight of happy feet as the family gathered around the hearth. John retrieved a dusty tin from a shelf and handed it to Anna. "Remember this?" he asked. Inside lay the first letters Anna had ever written, urgent, tear-stained pleas to Edward Marchand that had sounded hollow against her in-laws' threats. Now those letters felt like relics of a past life preserved to remind her how far she'd come. Anna traced the edges of those pages. "Look at how afraid I was," she murmured. She turned to Leo and Emily, who nestled beside her. "I wrote these because I didn't know if we'd have a tomorrow. But today," her voice cracked with emotion, "today feels like forever's worth of tomorrows." Leo leaned forward, pressing a hand to the tin's lid. "Can we send copies to Grandpa?" he asked. Anna nodded, smiling through tears. "We can do more than that," she said. "We can show him our school's first newsletter, our field trip, our science fair." She counted on her fingers and the art show we're planning for next month. She paused, looking at John. "There's no end to what we can share." Emily snuggled against Anna's side. "We're a real family," she said, voice muffled in the quilt. "All of us." John slipped an arm around Anna's waist and kissed her temple. "Family reborn," he murmured. "From a roadside rescue into something beautiful." Outside, the crickets sang their nightly chorus, and the mobile of paper cranes sighed on its string. The cabin's walls had once echoed only with silence. Now every surface vibrated with life. Even the old cuckoo clock in the corner, rebuilt by Leo's steady hands, ticked confidently, marking each second of renewal. As the last light bled from the sky, Anna stood and turned off the lamp by the hearth. Leo and Emily yawned in unison. John lifted Leo into his arms and carried him down the hall to the guest room, where a small cot waited beneath a window stenciled with stars. Emily lingered with Anna in the doorway, hair the color of dusk lips pressed to her mother's cheek. Emily offered Anna a folded paper crane, a final letter for the night. Anna took it, her heart full, and kissed her daughter good night. The hallway light clicked off, and the cabin fell into a hush that felt sacred, a blanket of peace after the storm of their lives. In that hush, Anna and John stood side by the window, watching the stars emerge like promise. Leo's soft breathing came from the cot. Emily's steady heartbeat echoed from the room beyond. The world had been harsh, unyielding, but in this place, through kindness, courage, and unwavering solidarity, a family had been reborn. Under summer's long luminous sky, letters and laughter wove their way between cabin and city, binding past regrets to future dreams. The echoes of giggles, like fragile fragments of music, filled every room once haunted by sorrow. From that roadside rescue to the triumphant ribbon-cutting crescendo, 3 wounded hearts had found their melody again, and in their chosen home they would sing it together endlessly.